Hello, I'm Archibald Gordon and welcome to Let's Talk Goals, where we talk about how we can make Jamaica the best place to live, work, raise families and do business by achieving 17 big goals. We call them the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. Now these goals aim to make the world a better place by 2030, and it's pretty simple when you think about it. Everyone should live a good life without harming the planet, and the harming the planet part of that is what we call sustainable development. It's about keeping our home, the earth, in good shape. And as I've said throughout this series, a national plan is just that. It's a plan for every national. We live in our homes and we live in our communities, so we all need to work together to make them better. It's all about partnerships. So today, I have with me to discuss partnerships, but specifically the role of the private sector. I have with me Charmaine Brimm. She is Technical Specialist for Socioeconomic Development at the Planning Institute of Jamaica. And I have Dr. Parris Lyew-Ayee. He's Vice President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. And I want to start with Dr. Lyew-Ayee by talking about first a little bit of your role at the PSOJ and how it contributes to the SDGs.
Well, the PSOJ has several standing committees that allow us to have focus on key areas of the country as it relates to private sector interests. One of them is the Energy, Environment and Climate Change Committee that brings together many different stakeholders from the business community who have interests in any of these energy, environment or climate change arenas. So when we have representatives from the energy companies, the oil companies, the gas companies, we have representatives from the utilities, but also from environmental firms that do EIA projects or involved in environmental.
That's environmental impact assessment projects.
Environmental impact assessment, but also engineering firms. We're also talking about large manufacturing companies that have ESG program and environmental, social, and governance initiatives going on. The PSOJ realizes again that the environment and sustainability is more than a slogan, is more than a beach cleanup or planting a tree once a year. It is something that's going to be woven into the fabric of our members' operations, and with particular interest with the private sector. It's not quite open-ended. A national program has much broader goals and therefore difficult to contain and measure and keep track of. Within the private sector, it's a little easier. We are driven by obviously the notion of making profits, but also reducing costs and being compliant. All of these things were down to environmental responsibility. But also the recognition of the triple bottom line is not just about profits, it's also planet and people as well. And how we get ourselves around that is very important, and that's what we're doing right now.
In that sense, before I get to Ms. Brimm, there is a business case for getting involved. What is the business case? Right
now, I mean, beyond productivity improvement and gains, beyond reducing energy costs or production costs or packaging costs and distribution costs, beyond looking at our products and making these things sustainable, both in terms of domestic production but also global supply chain. We're also looking at our people. Our people are not just our customers. Our people are our suppliers. Our people are our staff. Our people are our regulators, all of whom are working within the business sector ecosystem. What is good for our customers is good for the company, and it's something that we have to stop the kind of zero-sum game thinking that you can only do one or the other. And also short-term profits and those things, because when you look at risk is a key thing in any company's operation. And when we see the risk of climate change, when we see the risk of so many other things happening out there in public space, it's not just about inflation and exchange rate devaluation. It's about what's going on in the environment, and we're seeing this in a very real way across the world, as we aspire to become this developed country in Jamaica. the private sector has a very big part to play in all of that.
No, and that's why you're involved in several different projects. Before I get to those projects, let me just invite Charmaine Brimm here to talk a little bit about the work that you do at the PIOJ, because your work focuses primarily on community development.
Correct. So I'm assigned to the Community Renewal Program unit, and our mandate is to coordinate interventions to ensure effective service delivery in the most volatile and vulnerable communities across Jamaica. So, which essentially is those communities that has over 70% of crime. So we seek to provide a platform where partners or stakeholders, and stakeholders are government, international development partners, the private sector, NGOs, civil society groups, to come in a space where planning can be done together to inform, to identify priorities in these communities, because we look at the volatility issues. Volatility looks at issues such as the presence of gangs, we look at the violence-related injuries, murders and shootings, and we also look seeking to address the vulnerability issues, which are focused on things like teenage pregnancy, looking at literacy levels, the issue of squatter settlements across communities. So we try to pull partners together to address the priorities that can help to reduce these vulnerabilities as well as these volatilities. The Community Renewal Program also seeks to coordinate around 6 main pillars, and these pillars were identified coming out of an assessment that was done by the UNDP as well as the PIOJ, which shows that most of these volatile communities tend to have issues around 6 broad areas. 1, governance, and when we talk about governance, we're talking about the ability of community members to participate in the decision-making process. How do they make decisions for themselves, advocate for themselves? So governance is one. We look at socioeconomic development, because we're saying persons must be able to have agency, be able to provide for themselves and their families. So when we talk about socioeconomic development, we're talking about issues such as employment, readiness for the work world. We also look at promoting entrepreneurship, so persons who are interested in starting their own businesses, etc. We look at social transformation. Social transformation focuses on issues such as community cohesion. We know that one of the issues we have in these communities is the whole inability to cross boundaries, right? Yes. So we try to address those issues, as well as looking at some of the issues such as parenting, looking at the psychosocial issues. A lot when you talk about these volatile communities, residents are exposed to high levels of crime consistently, right? So you can understand the levels of trauma that also informs their behavior. So we want to address some of the psychosocial issues that can help to heal trauma, and also to try and bring back that cohesiveness in the community space.
So the intervention might cover any of those particular areas? Any
of those, in addition to physical transformation, looking at the built and natural environment, and youth development. Youth is a cross-cutting issue, because we recognize youth to be both the victims and the perpetrators of crime. So interventions can be along any of those 6 belts.
Let's talk about one example of an intervention then, for instance, that would address something like teenage pregnancy. What would that look like?
Okay, so that would look, for instance, like we would introduce one of those education programs. One, in terms of, first of all, as a young person, the whole thing of sexual reproductive health, looking at that, looking at things like, even if you do become pregnant, how do you cope? Introducing you to services that can be accessed, right? So normally, again, because we coordinate, we're not implementers. So for a lot of these interventions, something like teenage pregnancy, you would want to engage the National Family Planning Board, for instance, for them to roll out their suite of programs, or to just ensure the connectivity of like a teenage mother to the different services, So it would involve things like that. One would also want to introduce a psychosocial program as well, just to understand, as I said before, a lot of
the
these
sort of
youth
mindset.
have the mindset, because you do want to influence their mindset changes, right? There are a lot of cultural practices that feeds into why our youth do the things that they do. So the whole renewal of the mindset and exposing them to alternatives, you know, is important.
So when you this sounds like a sort of makeover that involves a lot of different kinds of people. So if you're having an intervention, for instance, you might go into a community with the aim of coordinating with the partners who can address those different aspects just in relation to teenage pregnancy, as one example. As one example, how do these interventions address this? What specific SDGs do they address?
So that can span across a number of them, and I think I'd have to probably look at the chart now to tell you the specific name, but we know the SDG talks about things like education, you know, looking at equality,
Sustainable
looking at
crimes, cities and communities.
Cities and communities, right? Building
That's
more
SDG
sustainable.
11.
Exactly. So when we create a coordinating space, and we tend to do this through the interagency network, the purpose of the coordination space is to allow partners to come together to start from the aspect of an assessment. We need to know what are the issues in the community, and we can't do that without the input of the community.
So I want to connect this to this idea of the SDGs. SDGs are really about planning. So the first thing you're doing is putting together a plan by talking to everybody.
Exactly.
This is also similar to the work that the PSOJ does as well.
Correct. And again, you know, one of the things, I mean, you have to have a plan and then the execution. A plan isn't just to have it and then put it on the shelf. And the engagement that is involved with the SDG implementations is critical. Understanding that the private sector has a huge role to play. This is not just all on government. It's not just all on civil society. But then balancing that with the primary obligation of private sector organizations to their shareholders and stakeholders, it's not just about a free-for-all. It has to have a plan. And how do those plans begin to dovetail with internal corporate plans? Where does the alignment occur? How does the alignment affect the primary objectives of a corporation? And again, it is not incompatible. And again, even if you look at the individual SDGs on their own merits from a primary objective of a business. Take, for example, SDG 6, which is clean water, SDG 7, clean energy. People need to also remember that, I mean, a lot of the executing agencies, implementing agencies will be engineering firms. These guys are private sector entities. They bid for contracts, they do these things. So the opportunity for businesses to ride the SDG wave, build more efficient systems, be a channel and a pipeline for innovation, which itself leads to business opportunities and profits and so on. There's nothing wrong with that. And again, and then of course, the secondary benefits now for all SDGs now, improved productive workforce, increase disposable income, meaning they're now going to be buying products and taking holidays, having entertainment options to them. So again, it's just common sense. It's good business to adopt the SDGs, and but it requires a sense of the reality that things are changing. What was doesn't have to be what will be. And stubbornness is going to be a very brutal teacher if you're not able to understand that. And again, it's very short-term planning on the part of businesses if you don't begin to embrace this wave right now. And you cannot blame government for not doing its part. You cannot blame the media in terms of disseminating the message. Don't dismiss this as being a conspiracy theory or hoax or something like that. It's real. And it's business sense. Just think about it like that. Don't think about it as a charity. Businesses are not in the business of charity.
Yes.
Think about it as business, and you realize that the benefits are the same.
So that's the business case for these kinds of interventions from the private sector. What is it from government? What's your investment? I mean, apart from being the people who actually do it, what does it do for communities?
Well, You know, we spoke about one of the SDGs being towards sustainable communities, but there's also that which speaks about decent work. So one of the things from the community level as well is that we want to position community members as well to be able to access decent work, to create their own employment opportunities. So even when we talk about promoting entrepreneurship, right? We have a lot of entrepreneurs coming up, so it's adopting the relevant business principles and models. And at this point I want to mention, for instance, the social enterprise model. We're talking about the SDGs, and the social enterprise model looks at a quadruple bottom line that looks at the economic, the social, the environment, and the cultural. I was very happy to...
Just before you move on, let's talk about what the social enterprise model is.
Oh,
yes.
So the social enterprise model, so by definition, we say that the social enterprises are businesses
that solve social problems.
Solving social problems that uses their surplus to reinvest in the mission. And that mission can be social, environmental, economical, or cultural. Because you know, culture is a big thing for us as you know, Jamaica. So the social enterprise model uses the same business principles. We are operating using ethical business standards. The difference, of course, is just that the use of your profits, right? Which instead of going to shareholders, it goes back into the mission.
And this is something you've also been teaching at the high school level. So just to give a practical example of that, I remember going to Holland High School, and those students at Holland High School saw potholes outside leading to the institution, and they came up with a business idea in order to be able to both make a profit but also fix the potholes outside, just as an example of what you're saying.
Excellent. And that's what we want to inculcate in our students. We want them to utilize a particular business model that allows them to problem solve, but also to care about community, your surroundings. So you want to identify the issues and understand the importance of, yes, you're making money, but the money is not just about me. It's about my environment. It's about the community that I'm a part of. And it's about becoming responsible for the community that we are a part of. And all of that we know, when you think about the SDGs that's really leading towards sustainable development, we want to make sure that at the community level, you know, and this is why when we talk about community renewal, we want to see where citizens are empowered to impact their own lives, and at the end of the day to improve their quality of life.
But also make money from doing all of that. Also make money from doing all of that.
That's important, because you do need to be able to take care of yourself. You need to be able to take care of your family, and still ensure that you're building your community, you're contributing to environmental health, right? And just looking out for the peoples around you. And by doing that, at the community level, you're contributing to national development.
Absolutely.
We're contributing to the attainment of Vision 2030 Jamaica, and we're contributing to the attainment of the Sustainable Development
So
Goals.
coming up with a plan together, working together to sort of put together the elements of the plan that suit your community, and then coming up with a strategy for achieving it. In terms of some of the programs that the PSOJ is doing, I want to highlight one in particular, Project Star, a sort of similar model in a sense to what the community renewal program does.
Similar, different at the same time. I mean, among other things, you know, the Project Star is listed on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange as well. So in addition, one of the key things, and I'm glad Charmaine mentioned, you know, how social enterprises work. The thing is now you are giving organizations the ability to chart their own destiny. Because one of the problems in the old way of understanding how NGOs or charities or however they work is they are completely dependent on funding. When the funding dries up, the project dies. To be able to create seed funding to start a social enterprise and then that itself becomes sustainable, that's where you get legs. And to be able to support social enterprise initiatives, to have that kind of legwork is very important as we evolve as a country and become more mature in terms of governance and business practices. But Project STAR itself is a fantastic collaboration between the PSOJ and the Jamaica Constabulary Force to bring about changes within communities. We look at the CRP model, we look at how governments themselves have worked, and we want to be involved. The private sector wants to be involved here. We don't believe that the government needs to be babysitting people for their entire lives. We need people to have the dignity of self-determination. And to do that, the police are not responsible for your education. The police are not responsible for your employment, but the business community can help. So what we have done right now is 4 communities in East Downtown Kingston, Savannah Lamar, Maypen, and Salt Spring. We just got into Salt Spring. But to engage the local businesses, to understand that each of these communities have different fingerprints in terms of their socioeconomic footprint, their crime situation, even their traffic, and all of those different kind of variables.
So about a plan that suits you.
Precisely.
Yes.
And then to be able to work with business communities in their interest, to be involved with a program like this. Understanding as well, and this is where it diverges a bit from a
community
CRP
renewal
program.
Yes.
Is that understanding that a community itself doesn't necessarily have 4 corners, because people go outside of the community and people from outside the community come in. So if we are able to touch a business that's outside of a community that would hire somebody from within the community, there we go. How do we prepare people from within the community to get employment outside the community? How do they get there? Look at logistics and realities of public transport, personal transport, their own needs for childcare while they're at work. All of those things are important. And then building a sustainable community, understanding that if in the case of a school isn't 4 corners and a concrete building. A school has students, but also teachers and staff. How do we get those people to come in, to feel safe, to work, as well as leave those communities and be productive without having to worry about things back at home? So it's a very inclusive program, Project STAR, but understanding full that we are building on the work done over 60 years by many different stakeholders as an independent country, and then evolving. We've learned, we understand that we cannot be doing the same old, but we bring 60 years worth of experience and education. All of us are getting training overseas and bringing back knowledge and experience, not to put it down. And that's where certainly the business community right now is engaged in a way I've never seen it engaged before. And we're very excited and proud of these types of initiatives.
So you say not to put it down, and you say building on experience, but that means having a certain mechanism in place in order to be able to monitor and evaluate how these programs go. So I want to start there. How are you doing that? In terms of first ensuring alignment with the sustainable development goals, and then just paying attention to the progress. Because again, like a plan, plan for community, plan for your house. You have to change the plan as you go along. Situations change. So how are you doing that? Monitoring and evaluating in order to change as you go along.
Okay, so we do have a robust monitoring and evaluation framework, and I will use Project STAR as an example because the PIOJ, so there's the partnership and the coordination. So there is a technical committee, working group that comes together where the Project STAR comes, and that is where we get the reports. No,
so a technical committee now, this is like a group of experts from different sectors.
So
your police officers, your members of business community,
the Project STAR team, the JCF, the HEART, the SDC, so all of the relevant stakeholders that are playing a role in what Project STAR is doing. So for the PIOJ, for CRP, we have a monitoring and evaluation framework. So we are looking at some particular indicators. So Project STAR is hitting a couple of things. You're talking about employment, you're talking about capacity building, you're talking about the reduction in crime, right? So we have we rely on the reports of our partners that will help us to feed that information into our indicator framework. And our M&E framework is aligned to Vision 2030, and which is aligned to the SDGs. And so it is as the work is going along that we are able to be monitoring and evaluating. So in case you might need to make a change somewhere, you are able to do that before it gets to the end. So
it's bringing everybody together, checking where you are on different matters,
right?
Measuring it, as in actually counting it with data.
Exactly.
So how much crime are you having? For instance, in the case of a teenage pregnancy intervention, are you having fewer or more people of teenage pregnancies? Checking.
Right. So we always start with a baseline, right? Based on the point of entry. That baseline could be 0. It could be that at the point of entry we're seeing teenage pregnancy at 80%. As the interventions are taking place, as we're getting the data and we're able to plug that in over a particular time, because we have to understand as well that change, you need to give it time.
Things take time.
Things take time.
Yes.
And so we are able to, once we have that data to feed in, we're able to look at our M&E framework and we're able to see the movement, if we're seeing a reduction in teenage pregnancy, etc. So it is very much data driven, evidence-based, collecting the data. Project Stars out there doing whatever they are doing, they are able to report to say, we have been in Parade Gardens, or this is what we have done, these are the numbers, etc. So that is.
You want to
yeah, but very quickly, I mean, beyond that, as an entity listed on the Social Stock Exchange, we also have M&E obligations in terms of reporting, because again, from the point of view of our partners and donors, they want to know where their money is going, what has it done, have we delivered what we promised in the pitches to them. So beyond alignment to Vision 2030, we also are accountable to the Social Stock Exchange shareholders. And it allows for an almost real-time type of obligation to make sure that we are accountable. It is something that is standard business practice across the world, and to have the kind of assurance internally and externally that the money is having the maximum impact. And we can't take our foot off the gas, we can't cut corners with these type of things. M&E can be tedious, but it's necessary. And it's something, it's not an option, it's an obligation, and it's something that we take very seriously.
So you've spoken a little bit about the business case, and as we close, I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of partnerships that we need to be forging as we go ahead on these programs to ensure they continue to be successful. Let's start with you.
Right, so we need to continue partnership with private sector, with our civil society groups. The issues that we're facing cannot be addressed by any one entity.
It takes a village.
It takes a village, and there are different levels of expertise. So we need the kind of continuous partnership that will see government providing the enabling framework, private sector plugging in some funds, or civil society group continuing to do what they do so well at the community level in terms of advocacy, pulling persons together. So we need to continue those kind of public-private partnerships with our IDPs, because we want to see a flow of
international development partners, IDPs.
International development partners, right? So we're looking at the development of people, looking at the resources that are needed, and then looking at ensuring that the ecosystem is working in such a way that we can see community renewal, we can see our vision, Jamaica becoming the place of choice to work, raise families, do business, and to see the fulfillment of the SDGs.
I don't think that anyone can deny that Jamaica has been on an upward trajectory by many different measures. And we do have the challenges that exist with respect to crime, and even that has been broadly moving in the right direction. That is not by accident. And again, it's something that the private sector takes very seriously. We will hold anyone accountable And that's another important element here, beyond Project Star or beyond any particular single program or any single community. It is something that we understand the role, critically, the role of partnerships. It is something that engagement is going to be important. Relationships are important, networks are important, respect is important. And it's something that we understanding broadly, partnerships between government agencies is not enough. It's partnership between private sector agencies is not enough. We are a consortium of private sector entities at the PIOJ. But we are engaged with government. Government is engaged with us. We are engaged with academia. Academia is engaged with us. And the kind of closed circuit policy making or research that's in the past. Because right now, beyond everything else, ultimately at the end of a monitoring evaluation framework, the end of a funding cycle, is results. And that's what we're after. And to be able to achieve those results, maintain those results, and continue to grow those results while the world is changing, the goalpost is changing on us. We can't take our foot off the gas. It's something that we're very keen on. Again, as I started, having a standing committee every month at the PIOJ keeps the focus on for us and to us. In terms of making sure that we're able to achieve these very important goals, because again, you cannot deny that this is a crisis. The need for the SDGs, which is a UN goal set. I mean, 193 countries signed on. Jamaica is one of them. We have obligations to meet these goals, and as a private sector, we are doing our part to not get in the way and do our part to help achieve those goals.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about partnerships.
Absolutely.
So we live in our communities, we are the ones who live in our homes. I think that's a beautiful point on which to end, and I'd like to thank my guest today, Dr. Parris Lyew-Ayee. He is Vice President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, and Charmaine Brimm, who is Technical Specialist for Socioeconomic Development at the Planning Institute of Jamaica. And again, if you want to find out about these projects, any of these kinds of projects, the way, or to find out about the ways in which you can partner, the ways in which you can get involved, you can get information on the Planning Institute's website and social media pages, as well as the social media pages of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, as well as its website. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Let's Talk Goals. I'm Archibald Gordon. See you next time.